So now we are starting to get into the appendicular vessels. So this includes the vessels of the arm and the leg. As you can see here, we have an arm. It is the left arm. So to start off, this is the upper arm, and we have the clavicle right here. So once a blood vessel passes by the clavicle, it then becomes known as the axillary artery. And then as it enters the brachial region, it becomes the brachial artery. And then it'll split into the radial artery and the ulnar artery, which we'll see in a second with the lower arm. This right here is the lower arm. So again, we have that brachial artery. It then splits into the radial artery, which will travel along the radial bone, so on the thumb side. And then we have the ulnar artery, which will travel against the ulnar. And you actually can't really see it, it disappears, but it'll stay on the pinky side. And we get to see it reemerge right here. And those come together to form the palmar arch, so the blood supply is seen in the palm of the hand.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to the vascular arm model, which we sometimes call the claw, and it looks pretty overwhelming, but you'll get the hang of it after a couple times through. So starting off with the arteries, we're going to do those first because there are less of them and they're just a little bit easier. And so starting from the armpit region here, we have the axillary artery, and as it moves into the upper arm region, it turns into the brachial artery. And it goes farther down the arm into the forearm. It's going to split off into the ulnar artery along the ulna here and the radial artery along the radius here. And then it goes farther down into the hand and splits off into the superficial palmar arch and the deep palmar arch, which is a little bit wider. So those are the arteries of the claw. So now we're gonna move on to the veins, and we're gonna start off with the deep veins. There are deep and superficial veins when there are only deep arteries. So we're gonna start off with the deep veins because they are similarly named to the arteries that they run along. So starting down here, we have the ulnar vein, and then along the radius, we have the radial vein. And then those come together into the brachial vein, and then go up into the axillary vein. So those are the deep veins. And then moving on to the superficial ones, these ones are a little bit trickier because we don't already have something that's named after these. So along the top side of the arm here, we have the cephalic vein running along the top, and it kind of goes all the way down. So it kind of runs all the way along the side. And then we have the basilic vein along here, and that also runs all the way down through here. So that's the basilic vein. And one way that you can remember the cephalic from the basilic is that if you hold your arm out like this, you have the cephalic going towards the ceiling and the basilic going towards the basement. And then off of those, along sort of in the elbow region, we have the median cubital vein, which connects the basilic and the cephalic. And then we have the median antebrachial vein, which is this middle one here that starts down here and then joins the basilic around the elbow region as well. So we have the basilic running all the way down, the cephalic running all the way down, the median cubital connecting them, and the median antebrachial that branches off. And those are the veins of the arm.
Okay, so you just got done looking at the video of the claw and you're probably feeling a little bit overwhelmed with those arm veins. That's totally fine. Arm veins tend to be overwhelming. So I'm gonna show you something I typically show my students. And this is a way of representing the veins. So what we're gonna do first is we are going to draw the deep veins. Remember, deep veins always share a name with an artery. So that's gonna be our axillary, brachial, radial, and ulnar. And I do apologize for the drawing. I'm not an artist, I'm a scientist, so just ignore my hand arm. All right, so we're going to start off with our axillary. It then turns into our brachial. Around the elbow, we'll split into our radial and our ulnar veins. And now we're going to do our superficial. So our cephalic vein will travel all the way from the top of the arm down the radial side. Our basilic vein will travel all the way from the top of the arm to the ulnar side. Around the elbow, they'll meet in the middle to form the median antecubital. And then off of the basilic, we get this median antebrachial vein. Another helpful hint for remembering cephalic versus basilic is if this person were to raise their arm up, the cephalic vein would be to the ceiling, and the downside of their arm would be the basilic vein to the basement. Here is a labeled version, so you can just linger on that for a second before moving on. So this is a video of the vasculature of the leg, and what we're seeing up here is the top part of the leg. This is the left leg, so don't forget to be including your left and right where they are needed. So what we see here is this big red vessel, and that's called our femoral artery, and it's paired with this blue vessel, which is our femoral vein. And this femoral artery will actually run down, and it'll go to the medial side, wrap around the leg, and pop out on the back into the popliteal region to form the popliteal artery. And now we're going to visit the lower part of the leg. So going back to this popliteal region, we have our popliteal artery and our popliteal vein. At this point, the vein disappears, so we'll just be focusing on the artery. So our popliteal artery continues down and becomes our posterior tibial artery. Its first branch is this anterior tibial artery that'll actually go in between the tibia and fibula and pop out on the anterior side, hence it being called the anterior tibial artery. But if we go back to that posterior tibial artery, it has a second branch called the fibular artery, which will stay on the posterior side along here, we just don't see it. And then it continues all the way down again as the posterior tibial artery until it forms into the arches found in the foot.